I think when we deal with this particular issue on the mining charter, it's important that we go back and look at the genesis of mining charter 1 and 2. I think back then, the country was faced with very serious challenges of having to attract investments into the industry, but at the same time having to deal with the issues of transformation, but at the same time trying to create stability within the industry. So you would find that in that context, there wasn't one solution that would work for all the stakeholders. So what was then decided was that labor, government, and the mining industry through the Chamber of Mines sat together, and they spent weeks and months to try and come up with something that would address the underlying concerns and needs of business on the one hand, and come up with some compromises in terms of what it is that government was prepared to put on the table and was prepared to sacrifice. And as a consequence of that, we came up through an elaborate consultative process with a charter that speaks to all of these issues. In other words, it was able to respond to the challenges of an industry that needed to be globally competitive on the one hand, and yet respond in a manner that is fairly transformational and sustainable in terms of what the transformation agenda is. And we thought that through that process, we've been able to come up with a mechanism that speaks across all the needs of the stakeholders, the capital providers, business on the one hand, government, and so on. So that is really the rich history that we've had in terms of Mining Charter 1 and Mining Charter 2. Now, the outcome of that is that the product that was produced was something that all of the industry players could defend, could go out and implement, they could own, because it's an outcome of a negotiated settlement. So we were hoping that that tradition that has been established and built over the years would come through and be moved into the development of Mining Charter 3. Of course, I mean, we are very aware of the challenges that have been exacerbated by the downturn in the economy and the need to move with speed. But things cannot move beyond the pace of which business can be able to afford. That's the reality. So if the business cannot afford it, even if there is a myriad of social challenges that are out there, we cannot and should not break the goose that is laying the golden egg. That is really the context. So we were hoping that through the Chamber of Mines, a number of representations that we've made would be able to engage with all of the stakeholders. We've made our submissions, both written and oral submissions, that we're hoping that on the back of that, all of the parties will sit around the table and negotiate and make compromises of something that would work. So what was missing this time around is what has been established and has built over the years and has worked. If you look at before Mining Charter 1 and Mining Charter 2 came into place, the industry was in a different space in relation to transformation. And yet through all of those processes, we've been able to move the dial. I must add that perhaps it's not enough. Maybe more needs to be done. But it also needs to be enabled by an environment that is conducive for business to be able to grow and attract investments. That, to me, has been the missing link in this.
So we're moving backwards because of a failure to engage. Stephen?
Yeah, look, I think that for this guy to come out with that charter in the face of a recession, is just insensitive to the environment out there. Because at the end of the day, Andile mentioned something which is very important, is that you're not in a vacuum. You're not operating in a vacuum. You're in a globally competitive world, and you need to attract investment because these businesses are highly capital intensive. And I think the mining industry was one of the early charters that came out that has made great progress with transformation. And just the concept of the words, radical socio-economic transformation, are very, very dangerous versus the concept of the words inclusive growth. And you can go back and you can look at India between 1948 to 49, when India was became a separate state and was decolonized, to 1991, before Singh came into power, and you probably have studied this, Nicola, India was like South Africa. It grew between 0 and 3%. It was going nowhere until the guy Singh, the guy with the hat, he came in and he transformed India. And you can see India's been liberalizing, and it's now growing at 8%. How are we going to transform our society growing at, the other day we're sitting in a meeting in the Minister of Finance hoping to get 1.5. I was out there dying, man. What is 1.5 going to help us? We need 5% plus. And therefore, you cannot have a business-unfriendly environment if you want to grow and if you want to transform your society. The two do not work together. And that's what I'm afraid at this point in time our leadership fails to understand, is that if we want to transform our society at a pace that is fast enough to satisfy the needs of the people, but at the same time not kill off investors and not, disincentivize a whole group of entrepreneurs that operate and create jobs, then you have to grow a hell of a lot faster. And we're not going to grow faster unless we're business friendly. And at the moment, we're just not business friendly.